Is war coming to Taiwan and China? And if war does break out, will it turn into a world war that ropes in other countries, like the United States and Australia? These are some of the questions being thrown around right now. China's been sending a record number of warplanes into Taiwan's air defense zone, and Taiwan's foreign minister says tensions between the two are at the worst they've been in decades. The big fear in the international community is that China is edging towards invading Taiwan. An invasion has been on the cards for the past 70 years. It hasn't happened yet, largely because of the United States. But some worry that the careful balance of peace in the region is starting to slip. Before we look at the million-dollar question of how likely a war may be, we need to understand why China is so keen on taking this small island, and why the US are even involved in any of this in the first place. Let's start with some background. There's a good chance that you know of Taiwan as a part of China, or at least connected to China in some way. The reason why there's so much tension between the two is because they both very fiercely disagree on what their relationship actually is. For starters, Taiwan and China both refer to themselves as China, even though most of the world only recognizes this China as China. Taiwan refers to itself as the Republic of China. It's led by President Tsai Ing-wen and sees itself as its own independent country, with its own flag, military, economy, etc. China, on the other hand, which is led by President Xi Jinping, and officially known as the People's Republic of China, says that Taiwan actually belongs to them. They see Taiwan as a renegade province, destined to be unified with the mainland one day. So, how did we end up with two places that call themselves China? It goes back to World War II. At the time, the Republic of China was a member of the Allied forces. It was a military dictatorship led by Chiang Kai-shek's Chinese Nationalist Party, the Kuomintang. At the end of the war in 1945, Japan was defeated, and land that had been occupied, including Taiwan, was returned. Unfortunately, another thing that returned to China was civil war, which had been fought on and off for decades between the nationalists and communists.
400,000 nationalists put up a last-ditch fight against overwhelming red numbers.
By the end of 1949, the Communist Party and its Red Army, led by Mao Zedong, had defeated Chiang Kai-shek, who fled with more than 1 million of his anti-communist supporters to the island of Taiwan. And this is how one China became two. Mao and the CCP established the People's Republic of China, with its capital in Beijing. Meanwhile, Chiang Kai-shek announced that Taipei would be the new temporary capital of the Republic of China, and maintained that its government was the only legitimate authority in China. If you're wondering why Mao didn't just head over to Taiwan to finish the job and crush the nationalists, this is where the United States comes into the story. As the Korean War kicked off in 1950, Western countries were getting more nervous about the spread of communism in the region.
If aggression is successful in Korea, we can expect it to spread throughout Asia and Europe and to this hemisphere.
So, the US established an alliance with Chiang Kai-shek's regime, making an invasion by the People's Republic of China a lot more unlikely. With war pretty much off the table, the situation turned into a political fight for international recognition. Countries around the world were basically forced to pick a side as to who they recognised as the legitimate government of China. Chiang Kai-shek's Republic of China had a head start. It was a founding member of the United Nations in 1945.
China signing first as the first nation attacked in this war.
Even after Mao's victory in the Civil War in 1949, Chiang Kai-shek's government continued to hold China's seat at the UN, and was recognised by most Western countries as the legitimate government of China in the 50s and 60s. Over time, things started to change. By 1971, the PRC had gained enough allies to unseat the ROC at the UN. This is around the time where many countries started to think of the People's Republic of China as China and the Republic of China as Taiwan. By the end of the 70s, the US and Australia joined the growing tide of countries that were switching their recognition to the PRC. The PRC was a lot bigger and more influential on the world stage than the ROC, and had become an attractive trading partner. Not only that, but a breakdown in the relationship between communist powers China and the Soviet Union led to China becoming friendlier with the West, and this was extremely valuable to the United States during the Cold War. Now, I admit this might seem confusing. If the US switched sides in the 70s, why is it seemingly in Taiwan's corner today? The thing is, Even though the US switched its recognition because of the economic and geopolitical benefits, it still maintained a form of alliance with Taiwan that continues to this day. Countries like the United States and Australia officially recognise the PRC as the legitimate government of China. But in official terms, they only acknowledge, not recognise, China's claim to Taiwan. So they acknowledge the fact that China believes it owns Taiwan, even if they may not agree with it themselves. This creates a bit of a grey area that allows countries to still maintain informal relations with Taipei, even if they don't officially recognise Taiwan as an independent country. Right now, Taiwan exists in a weird kind of limbo, a de facto state of independence. It enjoys a lot of the benefits of being an independent nation in how it runs itself, but officially, it isn't seen as an independent country by the majority of the world. And it faces constant pressure from China to unify. This brings us to 3 key questions. Why does China care so much about Taiwan? Why does the US care at all? And what does Taiwan actually want? Let's start with that first one, China's obsession with unification. A lot of this comes from the importance that China places on nationalism and being proud of one's Chinese identity.
Nationalism in China is like a religion these days. It is absolutely rammed down your throat through mass media, through the film industry, through daily propaganda, through banners on streets.
Chinese nationalism is built on what we call the humiliation-driven kind of nationalism.
There's a concept in China known as the century of humiliation. The basic idea is that for about 100 years, China pretty much lost every war that it fought, and it was forced to give up a lot of money and territory to foreign powers. According to the Chinese Communist Party, that humiliation ended in 1949. And since then, the CCP has been determined to restore China to its former glory.
台湾问题因民族弱乱而产生，必将随着民族复兴而解决。
China, bit by bit, has reclaimed territory from imperial colonizers, like in Macau, more recently in Hong Kong. Taiwan, it is sort of like the missing piece of the Communist Party's great triumph.
Which will then further cement the Chinese Communist Party's narrative and status as that great savior of the Chinese nation.
Failing to unify Taiwan would be seen as a bit of a disaster in China.
No regime in China can actually withstand the pressures coming through by losing territory.
They'll be judged historically as great failures if they don't do this, if they can't achieve it.
Okay, so we know why it means so much to China, but what about the US? It comes down to a couple of potential reasons. Firstly, Taiwan is seen as a crucial player in the future of technology.
Taiwan Semiconductor Company produces more than half of the world's high-end semiconductor computer chips.
These chips are essential for practically any kind of computer or advanced electronics, including digital infrastructure like 5G networks. Then there's Taiwan's strategic value. This island chain is home to military bases of the US and its allies, and it becomes a lot less useful if China can just simply bypass them and launch its forces from Taiwan. Finally, a decision by the United States not to step in may impact its relationship with its allies.
The American alliance system kind of depends on it to a huge degree on what happens in Taiwan. If in the end it chooses not to, then it completely undermines the confidence and faith that the Japanese, the South Koreans, the Australians and others would have in continuing their US military alliances if the Americans don't have the stomach to defend Taiwan.
This also goes the other way, and is a reason why an ally like Australia would likely join the US if a conflict did flare up, especially in light of the recent AUKUS security pact and nuclear submarine deal. Now, it's time to ask, what does Taiwan want? Things have changed a lot since the authoritarian regime of Chiang Kai-shek, which hoped to retake the mainland and rule a unified Republic of China.
Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek to fight on, whatever the future may hold.
These days, Taiwan is a thriving democracy, led by the Democratic Progressive Party, and most Taiwanese people simply want independence from the mainland.
Taiwan! Yeah! China! No!
The problem is the DPP is in a tough spot. If it openly announces that it wants independence for Taiwan, it would drastically escalate tensions with China. In order to keep the peace, Taiwan is stuck in this de facto independence limbo. So, with the current stalemate, what happens next? Over the years, China has made an effort to peacefully court Taiwan. China has also proposed a solution known as one country, two systems. If that sounds familiar, it's because it's the agreement that China currently has in place in Hong Kong. It's supposed to allow places like Hong Kong to operate under a unique system of government while still being an official part of China. However, one country, two systems isn't exactly inspiring a lot of confidence in the Taiwanese.
Obviously, as Hong Kong showed, the Chinese government will never really give the Taiwanese people autonomy. The communists just don't have that in their DNA.
Hong Kong is dead! Hong Kong is dead!
What happened in Hong Kong has probably been the worst thing ever for China's efforts to persuade the Taiwanese that the communists would be benevolent rulers. And for that reason, we're now seeing more and more military pressure.
Just a quick side note, Hong Kong and Taiwan's situations are very different. Hong Kong has been an officially, universally recognized part of China for decades, unlike Taiwan.
The big thing which many people in Taiwan always point out is that the PRC has never ruled Taiwan. The communists have never ruled Taiwan.
With persuasion not doing too well and military pressure increasing, it finally leads us to the big question. Is war inevitable? The answer is, understandably, not clear-cut.
The likelihood of a war is very, very slim.
Probably not imminent in the next couple of years because the Chinese military is going through a rapid expansion. And why would they use it now? Why wouldn't they wait another 10 years or 20 years when the gap between their military strength and the US military strength is even smaller?
So, unlikely at the moment, but even if it seems more likely in the future, it's important to remember that war is almost always seen as a last resort, especially when it involves countries that have a lot to lose. Not to mention the fact that we're talking about two nuclear powers going head to head.
What is at play is not just Taiwan alone, but China's international status, its recognition as the second largest economy in the world that is built upon free trade globalization. That is something that China cannot back off from.
All of this is a big reason why a lot of the moves being made right now are all about trying to win this tussle without actually having to fight.
I don't think the aim is to build up to a point where China actually wants to invade. I think the aim over 5 years, 10 years, 15 years will be first to say to the United States, hey, look, our military is almost on parity with yours. If we do this and you come in, this will be an incredibly bloody war. It will be a stalemate and you'll end up withdrawing and we will win. So don't come in. And the second thing is send the message to the Taiwanese that, hey, look, Washington can't save you. And we're going to get you one way or another. So your best bet is to come together and agree on our terms to, some sort of partial autonomy.
You can already see this kind of thinking in action now. Just take a look at what started this whole discussion in the first place, the record number of Chinese warplanes being flown into Taiwan's air defense zone. It's all about showing what China is capable of, and trying to make things seem hopeless for the Taiwanese and defeat inevitable. So, all things considered, unless there is a drastic change to the current situation, it seems like this stalemate isn't going away anytime soon. Thanks again for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to check out the International Politics playlist on our homepage. We've also got plenty more explainers just like this on the way, so make sure you're subscribed to stay in the loop.